Today's show is brought to you by Audible, and right now you can get a free audiobook download and 30-day free trial at audibletrial.com/joined-up. There's over 180,000 titles to choose from for your iPhone, Android, Kindle or MP3 player. Thanks for tuning in to the Joined Up Writing Podcast, a weekly show featuring interviews with fantastic authors sharing their personal stories on how and why they write. There's hints and tips for aspiring writers and great book reviews from top bloggers. Follow us on Twitter at JU Podcast. Right, cue the cheesy theme tune.
Put down your pen and stop your typing. Grab yourself a drink, cause it's Joined Up Writing. The Epilogue.
Yes, it's the Epilogue, our quick listen bonus shows that run between our longer interviews where we ask our guest a little bonus question. So today, following on from his full interview last week, I'm chatting to William Shaw, author of the excellent Breen and Tozer crime series of books, about his tips for aspiring writers. Before that, a bit of a quick update from me. I had to get my own writing show back on the road this week after a very lacklustre writing performance last week. I blogged about this in a bit more detail over at waynekellywrites.co.uk, but the gist is that I wanted to make sure I had a much better week this week, and the only way that was ever going to happen was for me to put together a plan and schedule in my writing. I did that, dividing up my time into segments and monitoring my progress throughout the week, including a midweek check with my writing buddy Maria Smith. And you should definitely go and check out what Maria's been up to as well over at First Draft Cafe, and I'll put the link in the show notes for that too. Anyway, it all meant I was much more effective this week. I slashed a number of now redundant sections from the book, lots and lots of words, and I did a complete rewrite of a pivotal scene in the book between my protagonist Mickey and his son. It involved moving the scene to a completely different location, which I think I've touched on before in an earlier episode. Somewhere that's got much more meaning and relevance to the character, and it's added much more depth and emotion to the scene. And I took the first half of it for critique at my writing group yesterday and got a very positive response, so at least I know I'm sort of on the right track with it. And I'll be doing the same for the week ahead, putting this plan in place and trying to stick with it. That's the kind of lesson that I've learned from this week. So what about you? How do you plan your writing time? Little and often? Or big chunks? Do you plan a specific time or just wing it when you can? Let me know at joinedupwriting.co.uk or tweet me at JU Podcast, as I'd love to hear what you're up to and how you're going about doing it. Also, a quick appeal for more iTunes ratings and review. We're doing great on the UK iTunes store, but we're seriously lacking on our US page and also Canadian and Australian pages too. So if you're listening to this from the other side of the Atlantic or anywhere else in the world, please take 2 minutes to leave a star rating or a short review. It makes a massive difference to potential listeners being able to find us, and it helps me improve the show. Okay, let's get to today's bonus chat with William Shaw, where we talked about how new writers can improve what they do. Thanks for sticking around for the epilogue, William. Really appreciate it. I just thought we could just touch a little bit on what you would see as your kind of best advice for aspiring writers, people just starting out on their kind of writing journey. Have you got any particular tips or anything you wish that you'd known when you started out?
I think the thing is to write a lot. I really, people say read a lot, but I think write a lot. For me, that's the thing. Obviously, reading is quite useful, but I mean, every time I move house, I find these huge, great piles of stuff I'd written when I was sort of like 20 or whatever. And I just think that's the thing, is to write a lot and write frequently, because you don't know what you are. You kind of invent yourself through writing, and it's just like. And these days there's so many great opportunities. I mean, there's so many competitions and things you can enter and stuff like that. And I just think, not writing, it's the corny old, thing is that a blank page gets you nowhere, does it? But, a page full of absolute rubbish, at least you can make better. And, I think you have to write a lot of rubbish and lose fear, just write stuff. Because it's really weird. You go back a few weeks later and you look at it and you think, oh, that's clever. And it might have been something written when you're completely drunk and didn't know what you're writing or something. Do you know what I mean? Something really bizarre. And you think, that's an interesting little voice, And I think, you only find your voice through lots of hacking away at it, I think. It's like it's like mining. You've got to dig a lot of rubble before you get to the stuff you really feel confident with about, and that you think, well, that could be the stuff that actually is what I'm on about.
Definitely. I think it's similar in a lot of ways to music, or in my youth I was in bands and different bits and pieces, and when you first start out, when you're like 15, 16 and you're in the first couple of bands that you're in, you're very much imitating other people that you admire, and you're pretty much trying to copy what they do, and it does take quite a while. You were talking earlier about really young writers that just seem to come out of nowhere. Well, obviously you get it sometimes with musicians that just seem to pop out of nowhere with this individual, amazing, unique voice or whatever. But in the main, most people have to do it for quite some time until their own voice emerges. And I think it's the same with writing. I know it was for me.
Yeah.
I'd stop trying to be somebody else, but that's easier said than done. I think the only way to do it is just to just create lots of stuff.
I think eventually you find one sheet of paper that actually has, or one story, and you kind of think, that's what I'm doing. And you realise, because there's so much choice, you can write about everything. Do you know what I mean? You can write in any style you want, and you just need to finally find one sort of voice that works for you. Then you can experiment with other ones. But once you've got the one, it's a bit of like the pivot, isn't it? You need one fixed place in which you can move a mountain or whatever it is. Whatever that Archimedes quote was, or whatever it is. But
yeah, give me a place to stand and I'll move the earth.
Was it Archimedes? Anyway, one of them.
Yeah, I think it was.
And it's that. Once you've got that, I think you can really, really start to move. But that can be years in the making. That's the nice thing, isn't it? Because you get people who actually. I met the other day. There was a writer at Crime Fest, and she just had her first novel published, and I think she was 90. And it wasn't like some amateur with sort of thing. She got a proper deal, and she was up for prizes as well. And so you can find your voice at any time. And it's not a genre, or it's not like fiction is not an art form in which actually it's one of the few art forms that doesn't overemphasize youth or anything. It's really good on gender. It's really good on age. You can be any of those people at any one time. What you need is to discover your voice, and whether that happens at 20, damn their eyes, or 90. It doesn't really matter.
No, I agree. You can just keep chipping away at it. And I mean, I know for myself, a big part of my development as a writer became a lot better, I think, was when I started getting critique. I joined a critique group a few years ago, and that really, really helped me because, again, there's one, similar to with you, you're sharing things with your agent, you were sharing your early attempts at fiction, and you're kind of getting feedback, good or bad. But I think that really, really helps because, again, I think a lot of writers, they do write a lot and then they stuff it away in a drawer, which is fine for the joy of writing. There's nothing wrong with that. But I think if you actually at some point want to do something with it, at some point you are going to have to take the plunge and actually show it to other people and actually kind of get some kind of feedback. Did you find that?
When you say the putting it in a drawer thing, I mean, I think, that should be the least of your ambitions is to actually, writing. I don't think anything's finished till it's been read, because I think if you're a proper writer, you write. You're not just dispensing this genius from on high. What you're doing is you're interacting with your reader. That's why everybody who reads a book reads a different book, because a good writer, I think, especially from the sort of contemporary realist sort of type, is actually just giving little. You're giving little signals to people. When we, in the previous conversation, we were talking about little details and things like that. And actually, I was saying, I love detail, but you don't want to use too much of it, because if you do that, you'll crowd out your reader's mind. You actually want your reader to participate in this book, to actually imagine who the characters really are. By not doing everything they say or describing all their shoes and socks and everything like that, you give the reader space. Also, if you use the language correctly, then I think you're in a dual relationship with your reader. Therefore, leaving something in a drawer is pointless. It's got to be read. Otherwise, you're not finishing. So it's on that level. Yes, I think you need to hear what people say, but I think, I just think it's, you can't be Emily Dickinson sitting there thinking. I mean, I'm not sure she thought they were brilliant works or anything, but that she was bloody lucky somebody found them to read them. Because I don't think writing's complete till it's in the reader's hands and the reader's liking it or hating it.
Absolutely. Well, on the subject of kind of getting feedback, and other people casting an eye over your work. How have you found, obviously being traditionally published, working with an editor, presumably, or editors, how have you found that process, and how do you react yourself to criticism?
Well, I'm probably different because, I had a great experience for many years working for American editors on magazines and non-fiction. And I think a lot of British journalists used to get really sort of, oh, God, how dare they come back and say I could rewrite this paragraph, because we weren't used to it happening. But actually, once you realise that that it's a collaborative process, and nearly all writing is a collaborative process, actually. The image is that we're all stuck in a carrot producing these works of genius. But actually, an editor saying three well-placed words about something you say absolutely fires you to go on something else. And the best editing, I think, can be like, actually, that has to go, but what if? And then you're off again, and I think great editors really stimulate you, and I love it as a process. And I'm really lucky to have a brilliant. I'm actually there's a couple of people who edit me at Quercus, and it's just a real pleasure. Sometimes it's like, oh God, they're right. This bit really is rubbish. This bit I've spent 3 months on is rubbish, but they're right. They're on your side. I love it. I think it's a real honour to be edited, to be honest. If somebody's going to take the time to go through your manuscript and come back with things to say about it
and improve it.
Yeah, exactly. They're not doing to make worse. I mean, you might get a mad person occasionally, but you just have to make sure that isn't your editor. But I've had nothing but brilliant input.
That's brilliant. And do you tend to get the same kinds of edits? Are there particular things that you found over the course that you've been writing novels where you tend not mistakes, but you tend to get similar kinds of feedback about particular things, or is it often just a range of things?
It's a range of things, but the thing I always get that comes back to haunt me is my timelines. I mean, and that's a sort of copy editor level. You have these things where you have the editor on top, and then give it to a sort of editor who's just there to actually look with a forensic sort of thing through it.
That's really easy to make those.
The copy editor comes back and says, sorry, it's not Tuesday today. And just every book, poor guy has to write out these long timelines to correct me. That can't have happened because it's a bank holiday.
Well, I've had it where I've actually, somebody's halfway through a manuscript, someone's name's changed, and I haven't noticed.
Names, ranks,
they've not been a main character. Yeah, they weren't a main character, but even so, I think I was actually reading it out in the critique group, and somebody said, wasn't he called Dave last week? And I was like, yes, he was. I don't know why, but again, I always think, well, it's my subconscious. He's telling me that his name should be whatever it was that I changed it to, but
I just really hope, I think because on this last one I've had loads of that, loads of names changing, loads of ranks changing, loads of all sorts of stuff, and I just hope they don't think I'm a complete idiot because this person was called Derek in the last chapter. It's just like, yes, so they were. I remember.
Well, I know. Yeah.
A very good reason for changing their name.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Well, it's a lot of information to keep inside one head. While you're writing a novel, it's this huge world that you create, even in the space of one book. And if you're obviously writing a series, because I know that Terry Pratchett had one particular die-hard fan, I think, that basically kept really, really detailed records of all the characters in Discworld and their relationships to each other and where they lived and how old they were. And Terry Pratchett just relied on him. He frequently made mistakes or couldn't remember. And this guy would say, oh, yeah, hang on a minute, I'll just check. And he'd go and look it up for him. So I don't feel too bad.
No. A lot of it's embarrassing, but anyway. Yeah.
Yeah, but as I say, we can't be too hard on ourselves. So you've done the main bulk of it. You've written the story, so it's still pretty impressive. But well, that's really, really interesting. So I appreciate you giving us that little bit of insight and hanging around. Good luck with the stuff that's coming out next. And it's Sympathy for the Devil. When does Sympathy for the Devil actually come out?
Paperback. It's out in hardback currently. It comes out in paperback again next spring, and then Salt Lane, I think about May, I think it is. So it's a bit of a wait. But
yeah.
Birdwatch is still around,
and they can find it in all
good reputable
online
shops.
And all good books. Yeah. The usual line.
Yes.
The usual line. All right. Well, thanks a million, William. Really appreciate you hanging around. It was great to speak to you.
Likewise, really enjoyed that. Thanks.
So there you have it. That's William Shaw, and I'd encourage you to go and check out William's work, including his latest book, Sympathy for the Devil, and you can find the links at joinedupwriting.co.uk, and you can also check it out on Audible. Now we're supported by Audible, and you can get your free 30-day trial and download that book for free if you want to, and that's at audibletrial.com/joinedup. So that's it for this week. Make sure you subscribe and look out for next week's episode, a full interview with indie writer Rachel Amphlett. As always, let me know what you're up to and what you want to hear on the show. So you can tweet me at JUPodcast or Mr. Kelly2U. You can also go to joinedupwriting.co.uk, follow us on Facebook, or drop me a line at wayne@joinedupwriting.co.uk. Thanks for listening. I'm Wayne Kelly, happy reading and writing, and I'll see you next time.
Joined up